Yes, that's right. The Survivor Know-It-Alls are back after episode number 12. Stephen Fishbach, what a night!
What a night. Big night for the Survivor cast. Big night for me, where the advantage was played. A lot to talk about here.
Yes, the curse was broken.
Well, for the first time in advantage history, it was played and the person didn't go home. So, but it was still not really that helpful. Excited to talk about the advantage. Excited to talk about the whole episode. Big episode. Michelle's winner edit continues, and Jason, who I assumed was definitely going to lose to her in the final two, booted. So anything I say, is probably wrong.
Yes, well, I think that this is a wild night, maybe a game-changing night in terms of all of us that thought we had it all figured out how it was going to go. I think that there's a lot of things in play now that maybe we didn't think they were in play before tonight. And a huge night, a changing of the guard. Stephen, I'm not even sure if you remember this. Do you remember back after episode 4 of Survivor Kaoh Rong when you said this?
I'm willing to say that I think Jason's going to be a finalist so much that I'm willing to put the knowing his
You
know-it-all
didn't do it.
line wrong.
You didn't do
I'm
it.
willing to accept
You
that
didn't
as
take the
or that's not
bet.
that interesting. Should we wait till it
It's extremely interesting to me. I will take that bet for a variety of reasons. One, I have nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose.
That,
You
you said
two,
that episode.
just mathematically, it's a great. That there's 13 people left in the game. A guy with a big target on his back. I feel like if you're saying he's going to be in the final
Based on
three.
that confessional where he talked about his daughters, and that's why he's a bully.
Yes.
I'm
All right. Okay. Here it is, Rob. Here it is. How do I...
Rob's the best. Know it all. The amount of Survivor podcast he does is not small because Rob's the best. Know it all.
Oh, I didn't even
newborn baby
know.
sleep won't affect
Sorry,
you.
don't talk
because
over my
Rob's the
music.
best.
Let me enjoy
Know
this.
it all. And winning podcast awards are way better than winning the title of Soul Survivor.
Okay, and we don't have to leave out the part where Shut Up Tim cuts me down. Okay, all right. Well, what a night! What a night! So hold on. You're saying that there's some foul play here with this bet?
I remember you that episode saying, "Let's figure out a really fair bet before we put it on the line." But I'm fine. If this is how you want to win it, that's fine.
Yes. Any way possible. You could listen to the episode 4 podcast from the season if anybody has any doubts about that.
No, it's yours.
But no, this is really great. This is exciting because I think that a lot of us presumed that Jason was going to go to the end and be potentially a losing finalist, and I think that there's a lot of things that are really could go different ways. All right, so enough preamble. We want to get to your questions here tonight. Hashtag RHAP. Also on our YouTube channel, robisawebsite.com/YouTube. Busy Thursday coming up, of course. Exit interview with Kyle Jason coming up on the podcast. That should be interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited. I feel like you'll finally get some really good insight into kind of the whole strategy around the Super Idol.
Yeah, I think that should be good. And then we have some busy podcasting to do. We have Parvati Shallow on the recap and voicemails with Mike Bloom. So a great Thursday coming up for you guys.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
It's a good one. Pulling out all the stops here as we get into the home stretch of the season. So let's get into this because I think that there's so many different things to unpack from the episode tonight. I guess, do you want to start with Ty's advantage and it being played here, or do you want to start with, I feel like it was Aubrey who was the player with the decision to make tonight about where to put her votes ultimately.
I agree that it was Aubrey's decision. Yes, that did seem to be the case because, we knew Sydney was siding with Michelle. We knew Ty was going rogue with his votes on Michelle. So the question was, what was Aubrey going to tell Joe to do? Is Aubrey City Hall here in this case, where Joe doesn't want to go against City Hall?
He doesn't want to go against City Hall. Yeah, so it was interesting. So you knew you had the 2 votes that Sydney and Michelle seemed like that they were a thing, and you knew that Ty was going to play his 2 votes on Michelle. And so you knew that the Sydney and Michelle votes were going on Jason. So Aubrey really had to decide where is she putting her 2 votes in her and Joe. And I think it was a bit of a surprise to me watching the episode. Like, I was really expecting the votes to end up going on Ty most of this episode.
I was expecting that too. I think that would have been the right move too. Like, take out Ty now. He seems like a much bigger threat. He definitely has an idol. He's definitely playing it next week. That's one fewer spot for you in the final four. Why not take him out now? Jason's a free agent. I mean,
well, I don't think that was a good move
say-
for Aubrey. I think that would be a very a poor move for Aubrey and Joe.
to vote out Ty.
Yes, because I
Yeah,
think
no,
that
I agree.
then-
I do agree with you because Ty is with them.
Yes, because then I think that Jason, Sydney, and Michelle have a clear shot at final three. Then, if they vote out Ty in this spot,
right, because it's Sydney and Michelle who have dabbled with Jason this entire time. So, but I was expecting Ty to get voted out. But it's what's interesting is that neither Sydney nor Michelle could really propose that because they both assumed he had an idol. So, Ty and Joe obviously weren't going to propose. I'm sorry, Aubrey and Joe obviously weren't going to propose, hey, let's blindside Ty. He doesn't have an idol tonight. And the people who might have made that happen, who were Sydney and Michelle, all thought he had an idol. So Ty to them seemed safe. So because he had two idols, there were 2 turns left to play it. So to them, like, they're thinking Ty's invulnerable tonight and the next night. He's got a ton of leverage. And maybe that's why he seemed so bossy to Sydney. Because to be honest, at the start of it, like, I thought he got bossy at Tribal Council, but the conversation in the water, he didn't seem that bossy.
Yeah. You don't feel like he took a page from the Debbie book in terms of how to structure this alliance of here's what we're going to do? Because he was almost like sounding desperate. At one point he says, like, please, let's just vote Michelle tonight. Like, let's just put the votes on Michelle.
I thought it was just this, like, rushed conversation in the water, They have a few seconds before Michelle joins them. Ty's like, Michelle, what do you guys think? Michelle? And I didn't feel like he was like, pulling rank or using leverage or saying, I'm immune, you have to do what I have to say or what I say. Like, I felt like it was a kind of rushed, botched conversation. And Sydney, who's always worried that someone is going to be bossing her, took it really badly. And that kind of spiraled from there, with Sydney getting more defensive and Ty getting bossier in response to these accusations of being bossy. And then by the time you have Tribal Council, you have these two sort of like warring factions.
So I really want to know from you, do you think that Aubrey made the right decision to throw her lot in with Sydney and Michelle and vote out Jason here, rather than go with the Ty plan and throw their lot in with Ty and vote out Michelle in this spot?
No, right? I mean, I think we all, for Joe and Aubrey, getting rid of Michelle is probably the move here. Would you agree with that?
I feel like it is, because Ty is going to be safe at the final 5.
Yes.
No matter what. Because you would assume, barring some unforeseen catastrophe, Ty is playing his idol.
So you definitely want Ty with you.
Council, right?
Yeah.
There's no chance at the last vote he can play the immunity idol that he will not fail to play his immunity idol and fulfill the prophecy of,
I'm not going to go home with an idol in my pocket.
Right? He will not go home with an idol in his pocket.
Right.
So you would imagine, okay, so he's safe. So what is your next move here? So now it really takes a lot of things off the board. So if you can't vote him out, I do think that there is an opportunity, especially now that Aubrey didn't go with Ty. I think the door is open for either Aubrey or Joe to get voted off here at the final 5, especially since they kind of screwed Ty over here. They left him hung out to dry, and now he could be a free agent going into the next vote.
And the other thing is, if they had allied with him, that adds to their chance for immunity, right? If Ty wins immunity next week, he might give it to one of them, or he might give the idol to one of them, because he doesn't need 2 immunities. So, I think that, I think the move is to get rid of Michelle. I mean, Michelle is the better, she's maybe the more likable contestant. I think we all see why Jason would lose at the end and why Michelle could win at the end. The only question is, like, challenge wins. Does Jason have a better shot at winning challenges? Michelle's won as many immunities as Jason has.
Who cares? Then vote out Sydney then at the next vote.
Vote out Sydney.
So you have to get rid of Sydney anyway. You vote her off in the final 4, and then I guess you have to vote off I guess it depends now. Are you really worried about taking Ty to the final? So if that's the case, you bring Jason to the final 3 with Aubrey and Joe. If Ty wins immunity at 4. Or I'm sorry, or if Jason wins immunity at 4, or vice versa. I mean, I guess that you sort of have the specter of, I don't want to be against Ty in the final 3. But I kind of feel like that Aubrey is controlling things a lot more if she gets rid of Michelle and cuts Sydney's legs out from under her, as opposed to the opposite here, where I feel like that Sydney is the one holding a lot of cards now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, like Michelle was Sydney's best ally, right? Certainly Aubrey, and my philosophy has always been like, you don't want your allies to have other allies. You want to be your ally's best ally, and so for Aubrey, I think it makes a lot of sense to get rid of Michelle in every way. Now, obviously, I think if Aubrey had done that, that would have been severing ties with Sydney. But yeah, I think that was the move. Aubrey wouldn't have gotten blamed. Ty would have gotten blamed. The power of the extra vote. Yeah.
And I don't want to be hyperbolic here and say, okay, well, now Aubrey will lose the game because she made this move. I don't think it's a disaster. I think that she's still part of the decision-making process. We could see it where then next week, I mean, I feel like that Joe is a person that definitely could go home next. I think that you talked about on Twitter about his visibility spike.
Yeah.
We certainly, that the final 5 could be Joe's time to go.
I think next week Joe is going home. And I also kind of think it's going to be in a medevac just because we've seen so much, or maybe like a pity vote, where like we've seen so many times about how tired he is and how exhausted and like how he's out of steam. I actually thought this week he might be going home for that very reason. So so I was surprised. So I kind of think maybe next week he will be.
But I feel like that Aubrey is sort of relying on Sydney having her back. Because if Sydney decides, hey, I don't want Aubrey around, then I think that she's in a position now where she could get rid of Aubrey. So Aubrey's game is now, firmly in the hands of Sydney, where I feel like that Aubrey, had she voted out Michelle there, could have been the person calling the shots a lot more going down the stretch.
This was a weird episode because I feel like for the first time almost ever that I can think of, a conversation was explicitly referred to that we didn't see on screen. And this was this conversation between Sydney and Ty that happened, where at Tribal Council, like everyone's saying, like, oh, I thought you guys had time together and you had a conversation. Ty was like, well, it wasn't a long enough conversation. Well, we didn't see any conversation. We have no idea what happened in that conversation.
Not very long for us, no.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was like, there were conversations happening where I feel like some kind of plan was ironed out, it sounded like, right? It sounded like everyone was saying, oh, we had a plan agreed on when we came in here. Was that plan Jason, which I'm assuming? And then why did Ty still go off script and vote for Michelle? So yeah, it's a pickle.
What did you think of the way that Michelle carried herself? Although I don't want to say carried herself because
I don't need to be carried, bro.
But how did you think of the way she handled herself at Tribal Council?
Oh, I thought she was great. I loved Michelle. This was my favorite Michelle moment of the season, was how much she just like went after Ty. And everything Ty said, Michelle would be like, see? He's doing it, he's had a run. There you go again. He was everything he said. He was like, pecking order. Looks like Ty's flipping again. Like Ty couldn't get a word out without Michelle calling him out, and you could see that it really flustered Ty. So as Tribal Council was going on, Ty was like saying these bigger and bigger statements, and I just thought Michelle was great.
Okay, so you've talked a lot this season about the Michelle winner edit, and okay, Michelle, you feel like was the obvious winner of this season, but I think that we always felt like, in terms of how this scenario was going to go down, that a part of Michelle winning was going to be Jason winning in the finals. But now we take Jason off the board, and I think that this really changes this conversation a great deal, because now who is the person that you potentially see Michelle beating in the finals if that winner edit is to happen? And is it possible that Michelle is your losing finalist, and maybe that's why you're seeing so much of her?
No, I've got a new theory of tonight. I have a new theory because Michelle's. It's Ty. Now, everyone says that Ty is definitely going to win if he goes to the finals, right? But this episode, we actually saw that people don't respect Ty's game that much. Jason's referring to him like flip-flopping like a pancake. Michelle and Sydney talk about how much he's flip-flopping. Like, nobody is saying about Ty, hey, this guy's playing a really smart strategic game. They're saying, this guy's all over the place. He's betraying everybody. You can't trust him. Like, these are the things you say about people who lose. And, Dan Foley, flippers never win. It's it's not true 100% of the time, but there's something true about it where if you're flip-flopping and people feel they can't trust you and people feel burned by you, they're going to not like you. They're going to want to campaign against you in the jury box. And you saw this episode. Every time someone said something negative about Ty, you cut to the jury, and there was Scott nodding along, and there was Nick nodding along. You know, there are people over there who don't like him. And he's not this like radiant force for good anymore. Ty has become polluted by the game.
Wow. That's big. I mean, especially if it was the final two, Ty versus Michelle. I mean, you certainly could see a scenario where you have Julia, who's certainly a pro-Michelle vote. You have Jason and Scott, who are going to be anti-Ty votes. Nick, if he goes back to the beauty tribe roots, you could see him as potentially, and that's 4 already in an 8-person jury. So I think that, you know, that's interesting. That is very, very interesting to see Ty potentially in the final. Again, hard to imagine that scenario, how it unfolds of Ty and Michelle in a final two. And again, there's only 5 people left, and there's 3 hours of TV. So I'm assuming final two in this season. And that's really, I think that while I felt like it seemed like this season could be predictable a couple of days ago, I think that this is really going to be, boy, how is that going to happen?
Well, we saw in the preview, and I never trust the preview.
And that's to say that to me, that says it's almost not going to happen. The fact that we saw it in the preview.
Well, I think the thing that's going to happen, and again, like, let me call my shot because all of my called shots so far have been pretty wrong.
I don't want to put my knowing is know-it-all trophy on the line.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, your ill-gotten gains.
I'm not gonna like throw it around willy-nilly like you do. Like with the advantage.
Yeah. Which is, if Joe is taken out of the game next episode, then suddenly you've got Ty, Michelle, and Sydney, maybe a final 4. They're like, Aubrey's obviously the one we want out now. Mm-hmm. And then that's, final 3. There it is.
Yeah, so you think that Ty wins a final 3 immunity and then takes Michelle to the
end?
Or
Michelle wins and takes Ty over Sydney. I mean, I think that either of them, like, Sydney to me, like, I would be most scared of going against Sydney at this point, of the remaining, maybe Aubrey, of the remaining competitors.
I mean, are you buying into Sydney as a potential winner? I mean, she had a great episode tonight, and again, like, Jeff just, like, taunting her mercilessly during that immunity challenge.
Yeah.
It's like, Sydney's totally out of it. What the hell is she doing?
I mean, I think the game that Sydney is playing, she's exhibiting control with her alliance, right? We certainly saw her tonight. When the vote was about to go not her way, she changed it to go her way. She's got her alliance with Michelle locked up. She's tight with Aubrey. I mean, I think if you just look at position, Sydney's in a great spot. If you look at position, Aubrey's in a great spot. I mean, in terms of just game logic, there's a lot of people who could make it there and win.
Okay, so this is really exciting. We haven't barely said a word about Jason. Anything you want to talk about him? Because I really was starting to get the vibe and I kept citing Chris from Vanuatu that I was like, oh, here we go. It seems like he's at the final 6. It seems like they're forgetting about him, that they're talking more about what they're going to do, that Ty wants Michelle out, and I felt like that maybe they were going to go ahead and get Ty out, that when Aubrey said he's so dangerous, and I felt like they were about to forget about Jason, they did not.
Yeah. Well, this is what I like about, and again, I don't want to be too fulsome in my praise of the producers, but I think, we've had seasons in the past where, Jason was a kind of obvious boot tonight, right? You had Scott go, you had Julia go, and now you have Jason go. And I think what was great about this episode was that the narrative was spun in such a way where, we're thinking, oh my God, is it Michelle? Is it going to Ty get blindsided? But we still see why at the core it had to be Jason. And I thought it was a really great work done by the producers where it was a kind of obvious boot, and not only the story itself kind of got us thinking, but the way it was put together, the editing, the way they were aware of how past episodes have been edited, just kind of fooled us into believing that it was someone else, and then it was Jason after all along.
Why do you think that Jason didn't vote for Michelle, or at least
that Joe vote was so random?
it was so random. And why didn't he try to do more to leverage that information in terms of like, okay, Ty tells Jason,
Right.
vote for Michelle tonight, which I think was a mistake on Ty's part. If they have 4 votes, I don't know necessarily, unless he found out after the fact that maybe Aubrey and Joe weren't on board with that. But it seems weird to me that Jason didn't either try to go to Michelle and say, hey, just so you know, Ty is working hard. He's trying to get me to vote against you. Or it is odd to me that he also did not vote against Michelle to cast a random vote for Joe. Again, not enough to take Michelle out. Still only 3 votes, but at least it's 1 closer to him staying in the game.
No, I agree. I completely agree. I think that I think it's kind of like unexplainable, and that's one of the things I'm excited for your interview tomorrow with him is like why, like even if like why not just do the throwaway vote for it didn't seem like anyone ever was talking about Joe. I mean, there must have been some reason why he said Joe.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to talk a little bit about Aubrey and how she sort of got caught by Sydney in terms of Sydney asking her, what are you going to do? Are you voting with us tonight? You're not going to vote with Ty, right? And I thought that Aubrey didn't come off very straightforward in that moment. Do you know the moment that I'm talking about?
Yeah, they were walking together and there was a conversation. It's really funny you say that because I actually thought she handled that really well, where she was like, we all make our decisions different, right? Isn't that sort of what she said? Like, we all make our decisions differently, and like we have a difference of opinion about this. Is that not the right conversation?
Yeah, I think so. I felt like that Aubrey really needed to be with Sydney when Sydney is saying like you're with us, right? And
right.
she was like, it's so tough. I felt like that and I don't mind if she's like that in confessional, although in confessional I would like to see her be a little more direct and like, here's what I know I want to do. But I felt like that she really gave Sydney a reason to pause and to say, I don't know if maybe Aubrey is with us till the end.
I don't know. I mean, I think when you have a really close ally, I think disagreements are good. And I think, like when I'm just thinking of myself with Jeremy last season, like we would disagree about things all the time. He'd be like, I want to do this. I'd be like, I don't want to do that. Eventually one person gives, but like the strength of the alliance is the ability to disagree.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That it's just like in any decision that you make in a marriage or any sort of partnership, you might not agree up front, but then if you come to an agreement by the end of it, we might just be seeing the beginning of that conversation and not the end where Aubrey is saying, Sydney, you're totally right. You convinced me. I'm on board with this plan.
Yeah, no, that's what I think. I think at some point, like, this is right when Sydney's first bringing this to her, and Aubrey's like, I don't know. Like Sydney feels very strongly, and I think she especially feels strongly about the way this idea was presented, almost more than the idea itself. And I think Aubrey acknowledges it's a good idea, and Aubrey's got to please a lot of people here. Sydney doesn't care about pleasing Ty, but for Aubrey, I think she's managing all of the different relationships in the game.
Do you think that there was any part of this where Joe was like, I am voting for Jason 100%. I hate Jason's guts. I can't take him anymore. And that Aubrey, she might have wanted to vote out Michelle, but once Joe says, I have to vote for Jason, you don't think that was the case?
No. I don't think Joe is taking a stand on anything. Let's be honest.
I
take a stand.
I think that would explain why Jason is voting for Joe. Also, I think that we saw that scene of them tonight where Jason was trying to talk to Joe, and Joe just like wasn't like giving an inch to him. Yeah. Like I feel like that there was probably bad blood between those guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that Joe doesn't like Jason. I mean, we saw his reactions when Jason was dumping the water out. Joe was like really like on a moral level opposed to that. Mm-hmm. Or I guess Scott did that, but Jason was a part of that.
Part of the willing participant.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. It's clear that Jason doesn't like him, but it's also clear that. That Joe doesn't like Jason, but that Joe is. It's such a random Joe scene too. That's how you know Joe's going next time. It's such like a random what a nothing confessional from Joe. Jason's a jerk or whatever it was.
You've got this whole edit all figured out, yet somehow you lost the Knowing Is Know-It-All trophy over edits.
Through shenanigans. That's how. Through shenanigans.
John Mish all over again.
You never took a stand. It was just like me against the world.
That's what I do. Yeah. Play the middle, Steven. All right.
We got to talk about the advantage here, Rob.
Yes, keep going. Advantage.
So I mean, I think as I've said, I was kind of hoping that Ty would be voted out when he played the advantage just to keep the streak alive. It's still interesting, the advantage still was a useless play, right? It still came to nothing. He played the advantage Michelle. Michelle did not go home. The advantage had no impact on the votes. Did not create a tie, did not create close to a tie, did not affect anything at all.
It was Ty's advantage.
Ty's advantage did not make a tie. You can kind of see why for my season it got like more powerful because like if had he had a vote steal and Jason had voted correctly, they could have actually gotten Michelle out. But
but I feel like that's sort of like a false argument because we talked all season like, oh, obviously it didn't have an impact because it was, they had to increase the power of it. But I felt like that it would have had Aubrey and Joe voted with him. I felt like it would have worked out fine tonight. I think we would have been talking about what a great move it was by Ty if Aubrey and Joe were so inclined to vote with him. So I don't think that it would necessarily needed to be more powerful after this usage. I think
you would have been talking about what a great vote it was of me to split the votes last season if Spencer had voted with me. Like, what an argument. And B, if they had voted with him, he wouldn't have needed the advantage.
Yeah, I guess so. No, it would have been three. It would have been 3-2-1. It would have been 3-2-1. But it opened up the possibility that Jason, if he would have voted with Michelle and Sydney. So, but I don't think it needed to. I don't think it necessarily needed to be more powerful than it already was.
I think making it more powerful gives someone like Ty in that position more leverage. But I guess my bigger point is that what's so fun about the advantage is that it's so situational. It's so hard to play correctly. You have to be certain where the votes are going, which is in itself like incredibly hard, and obviously Ty was wrong tonight. And you have to be behind by 1 or 2 votes for it to even mean anything. So you both have to like not have the majority and know exactly where the votes are going. Now, like I said, like even if Ty had my advantage, it wouldn't have mattered. And if he had known where the votes were going, if the votes had been going his way, he wouldn't have needed it. So it's like such an interesting advantage because it does actually very little to affect the game, but it creates a lot of tension and dynamics around itself.
Which is great. Season 33, Stephen, is there an advantage? Is there a advantage with the vote steal, or is it 3 and out for the advantage?
I hope they do another vote steal. I think that like now that it's been, I feel like it's like with the Idol, the first few times it was played, like people didn't really know what to do with it, and then like once you get some, granted the Idol the first few times was much more powerful than the Idol now, or certainly than the advantage, but I think once there's been a little bit of like time to process it and a few like disastrous plays of it, you can get some like thinking around how to use it correctly. And I want that for the advantage. I want the advantage to like, granted, as soon as it's played correctly, my Twitter feed is going to light up with like, oh, Fishbach, you suck even more now. But still, as a fan of the game, like I want to see it happen.
Okay, let's bounce around a couple of quick things before we get into the questions. How great was Joe in both the challenges tonight?
He was great. Poor Joe. I mean, let's be honest. Like Joe is freaking killing it out there. He's 72 years old. I can barely do it at 36 or whatever I was, 37.
Yeah, all great. That was so funny, but that was perfect. Really great challenges in terms of entertainment value. Both the reward challenge and the immunity challenge, stacking up the blocks, him spelling immunity wrong.
That was great. The spelling was pretty hilarious.
That was all great. What about Mark the Chicken eating the grub and doing tricks? I mean, it seems like every time we think that Mark the Chicken can't be more omnipresent, he really outdoes himself.
Mark the Chicken is he's like one of the bigger characters of the season, and like they know it.
Yeah, no, he's incredible.
Can you hear that background noise from me?
I do not hear anything.
I'm gonna close my door. I'll be back in 15 seconds. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Of course, make sure you get your voicemails in for the podcast tomorrow with Mike Bloom. Go to robbinswebsite.com/voicemail.
My TV is turning on and off automatically. It's like the Chinese food all over again.
Your house is haunted.
Yeah, I think so. I think it might be.
All right, and then also the Mark the Chicken eating the grub. Did you think that was tree mail? Did you think that we were headed for a gross food challenge tonight?
Oh, that's funny. No, I didn't think that at all. Did you think that?
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, here we go. Oh, tree mail. Here we go. Gross food. But no, it's just like that he found like one of those same exact things that they do have eating the gross food challenge.
Yeah, it's funny. Those things, I think I ate one of those things in Coke and Cheese. Those things are nasty.
Yeah, looks like it.
Yeah.
And then also, in terms of Survivor now taking the contestants to zoos. Now, isn't it supposed to be when you're on Survivor, you're already living with
In the
wild
jungle,
animals? Yeah, right. It's like it's not enough. We need to take the survivors and now put them in cages with wild animals.
Yeah. That's pretty funny. I didn't even think about that.
All right, let's get into some of these questions, Stephen. Why don't you get us started here with the first question?
All right, Carrie Graveline wants to know, does CBS listen to your podcast? Joe had 2 confessionals. It's the Joe Show tonight.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
I don't think they're changing up the number of confessionals from Joe based on anything we're doing on the podcast, and these episodes are edited and cut way before our analysis even gets close to where they are in the production process, so probably not. Probably coincidence.
Yeah, I'm imagining that Joe's confessionals had nothing to do with our podcast.
Yeah. Little has to do with our podcast. Amanda B says, if Ty was cast on Heroes vs. Villains, which tribe would he be on?
I thought Heroes until tonight. I still think Heroes.
He's a hero. What you think he's a villain? To the audience, he's a villain?
No, he's a hero, but he's had a journey.
Yeah, I think that you're right. He's a very interesting figure where the people that are out there may not love him, but I think to the audience that he is a hero. I think that maybe, I think there are people like that. If you take a look at that Heroes tribe, that maybe there were people that got on people's nerves out there, but were heroes to the audience.
Hero. That's not true, actually. Like, JT's a good guy. Tom's
a
good guy.
Sugar, though.
Oh, no, yeah, for sure. Like the... Yeah,
Rupert, I think, also potentially might have been in that same category.
There's a lot of them out there. Although the villains, look at those villains. That's a tribe of like mouthy jerks.
The greatest tribe of all time. Haiku Fishbach says, why did Ty continue to push for Michelle instead of just going with Jason and not causing any problems?
Yeah, I don't get that. I mean, that's the question. Like, what was the plan for Ty? And yeah.
Well, I feel like that what we saw in the episode was that he went to the animal sanctuary with Jason, that Jason was really sort of like putting the schmooze on Ty.
Oh, you think it was related to that? Wow.
You saw Ty in the episode talk about that. Jason, his daughter. He's a good guy. I think he did not really have a connection with Michelle at any point in the game, and I think he felt like, okay, well, I could flip to Jason. I could stick with Aubrey. I want to keep more options. Michelle is like nothing to me. So why don't I just get rid of the person who I don't have a relationship with at this point, who's fighting me for this spot in the pecking order at the bottom of this alliance?
Well, it's funny, like, there's that confessional in the next on Survivor, and it's Michelle saying, who would have ever thought we'd get to the point where Ty and I would be aligning? And I couldn't help but think of that confessional she had about, like, with Debbie, like, who would have ever thought we'd get to the point where we'd be turning on Debbie? I don't know, it's totally conceivable. Like, I believe that. Why not? Sure.
He's thinking about these things. Okay.
Carrie Graveline wants to know, why did Jason cast his vote for Joe?
That we don't know. We have to ask Jason that tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I think that probably that Jason felt like he was dead to rights, and I suspect it might have been bad blood between him and Joe.
Yeah, there must have been some kind of animosity there. It was sort of seemed like a throwaway.
And you have to put it on somebody. Okay. Connor wants to know, was the threat of another super idol the only thing that kept Michelle from targeting Ty in this vote? Wow, so now Michelle is like running the alliance.
Well, or Sydney, let's say. Michelle and Sydney. And I actually wonder if that's like, it didn't seem like anyone even brought it up, and I do wonder if the double idol thing, even if not the super idol, but like having the potential of 2 idols, because it seems like they all assume he's got a second idol. Is like, you're not, like, why go for him when it's not possible? And it was exactly what happened with Yule, right? Yule season was that no one even bothered targeting him.
Yeah, I think that there's probably that. I think that they were concerned about his advantage, which they didn't know what it was, and I think that probably Aubrey shot that down too. I think that Aubrey's like, no, we can't. We're not voting out Ty at this point. They just didn't have the numbers.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to do the Jason thing. So Sydney was really out on Jason more than we anticipated. Titan11 says, if we have a tie vote tonight, if Aubrey flipped, will Ty still have the extra vote on the revote? Steven, no, right?
Well, so my stolen vote I would have kept on the revote only, and it would have acted as though it were the person's vote. So if that person were ineligible to vote, then I too couldn't vote. Like if it were a tie vote, not tie voting. But I don't think the extra vote is going to play that way. I think maybe my steal would, but I don't think the extra vote would.
No, I don't think so. I think that probably would have had that come down to I don't have a pen and paper in front of me, but how would that have worked out?
No, I don't think it would work out. I don't think it would.
But it'd just be boring live podcasting to figure that out right now. Okay. Josh says, why does everybody hate Joe? He's freaking 72-year-old machine, and now he made the top 5, but every week I hear he's going to get medevac. He's my least favorite, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, he might be a little under-edited, but come on, guys. Respect your elders.
I think that... I think that's a great point. I think people do respect Joe, and I think everyone is like amazed at his accomplishment, being as old as he is, making it as far as he is, doing everything he's doing. But at the same time, I think we can all laugh at sort of like the edit that we're seeing on the show and how he's basically invisible. Like us saying there's not a lot of him doesn't mean to say that we disrespect him or don't think he's a good person. And that I think is really the whole point of the question of edits. It's like this is a story that's being constructed based on an event that happened. It doesn't mean that the person is a bad person. It just means that this is the character they're playing in this TV show.
Yeah, I think we're having fun with the whole Joe thing. I don't think that any disrespect is intended from anybody, especially on a night like tonight where he brought so much humor to the episode. I liked it when after the reward challenge that he said these dumb balls, yelling at inanimate objects. I mean, I think that maybe we need more 70-plus-year-olds on Survivor because he's brought a lot of entertainment to the show for me.
I think so too, and it's like, we've got a lot of kind of similar players over the years, and Joe is someone different, and I think that's what's so great about Joe is that he is a different character, bringing different perspectives and a different walk of life. Like when he comes and responds with like such moral clarity about something like Scott pouring the water out, you don't hear that very much anymore. It's like everyone's saying, oh, I can use this or I can't use this, and Joe's like, this is bad. This is like a bad thing this person did, and like I really enjoy having someone like that with that kind of perspective on the show.
Yeah, he's been good.
Matthew Rogers wants to know, with Jason's elimination, does that mean the end of the road for old Joe since he cannot beat anyone else?
Well, I don't think anybody was talking about Joe as the winner of the season beating Jason in a Final 2 scenario. I mean, I think that I do hours and hours and hours of podcasting a week. I don't know if we've ever really done a deep dive on Joe versus Jason.
Yeah. Well, is now the time?
No, Jason's done. Jason's on the jury. I do wonder though, in terms of Jason and Scott on the jury. I wonder though, and now that the Bash brothers are back together, do you think that they will be a force in terms of guiding this jury, Stephen?
Yeah,
as somebody who has experience on the jury, do you think that now Scott, he was sort of like, it's interesting to see the dynamics of this jury, because I don't think that there really was somebody who was trying to really steer the jury, but now that Jason and Scott are together on the jury, you do feel like that they're going to be lobbying for and against certain people.
Yeah. I think everyone is lobbying a little bit. I was actually talking to Sierra about this today, Sierra Easton from my second season, about like she was so totally over it. I think everybody else was kind of like lobbying one way or the other, but for the most part, I think everyone really is jockeying for someone. Is trying to still play the game in some way. And I think you're right. I think with Jason and Scott both over there, that's why I think Ty could be in trouble. You've got a very anti-Ty contingent over there.
Yeah, especially the way that Ty burned Scott with Jason's idol. I'm sure Jason would have liked to have had his idol tonight, and now those two guys are going to be sitting there all day talking about, that Ty, he really screwed us over. What a jerk that guy is. Everybody thinks he's so great. Mark the Chicken sucks. I do think that could continue to fester, where I don't think that Scott had that person to have those conversations with prior to this.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And maybe Nick, but like Nick actually seems like pretty even-handed. Like in terms of people who are over it, like Nick actually seems like he's like maybe more over the game. I mean, having watched these
Nick is anti-Ty at all. I don't think
No.
like that.
But I
on
even just
that
mean in
vote.
terms of like having a vendetta. It seems like Nick, of anyone that we've seen on the jury, is like the most sort of like, well, I had fun and I played the game, and now it's time to like make fun of these idiots around me.
Yeah,
I'm just
no, I
watching
think
these Ponderosa videos, which are really great.
yeah, Nick and Neil, I feel like that they don't really have an axe to grind with anybody, especially Neil got medevaced out of the game. I don't feel like
But
that. I
Neil
feel like
still has got like a foot in there where he's like, I should have won. I should have won.
I should have won, but I don't think that he's blaming anybody for his downfall because he didn't have a downfall.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. People who are like medevaced or idled out. You know, when someone's idled out, I think they're less bitter too.
Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take some more questions. This is from Yelamot. Does Michelle beat Ty in the end now? Stephen is saying yes. I think that's going to be really interesting. I think it's going that scenario though. While I think it would be very plausible, I feel like for the viewers at home though, I feel like that's almost going to be one of these things where the audience is going to just be completely blown away of. What? Hold on. Why didn't Ty win? I don't understand. Like I feel like that it's like.
I think that's the story that we're seeing. Like that's the story of this season.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is why didn't Ty win? Like this great golden character, you know, becomes tainted, and I think that starts now. And that's the next 2 episodes. Is why didn't Ty win? I mean, I could be wrong. I could totally be wrong, but that's what I think is going to happen.
I think the audience is going to go nuts. I'm not going to go on the Facebook page for Survivor the day after that happens.
Yeah.
If that happens.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. I'm going to go on there right after the show.
Are they? Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay. Ground Scarecrow says, do you think that Jason could have done anything to get the vote on Ty, or was he just a dead man walking? I mean, he did seem like he was a dead man walking, and we've talked about a lot of the reasons why a vote for Ty just was not in the cards.
Yeah, I mean, there was the idol question, the alliance question. I just think like it was always going to be Jason. There was a moment when Ty considered like, hey, what if it didn't have to be Jason? But everyone was sort of like, it's Jason, it's his time. I think sometimes like the momentum with these things can kind of like get overwhelming, especially on first player seasons. It's like he's next. We did Scott, we did Julia, now it's Jason. You know, I think that's like, I think maybe if it was returnees, they might be like, hey, hold on a second, like, why Jason? And sometimes returnees will almost do the opposite of the thing that's like supposed to happen just because it's more interesting. But, you know, sometimes almost they overcomplicate it, but there's something to the simplicity of Jason's next, let's do Jason.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Carol Gillis says, I was really impressed with both challenges in this episode. Very creative. Are they both entirely new? Well, certainly not the immunity challenge. We've seen that a number of different seasons. I believe that maybe Blood versus Water was the first time that we saw that challenge. Tyson won it towards the end.
I don't remember it.
Water.
Is that right? It was a spelling one, too?
But it wasn't spelling. That
Right.
that the spelling part was different, but we've seen the thing with like the teeter-totter and the rope. I believe also John Mish might have won that challenge as well in Survivor Worlds Apart, and in San Juan del Sur. And then we also have it a couple of, it might have been Keith now. I don't remember. I think it was John, but it might have been Keith. And then I feel like we did see it another time along the way as well.
But the reward challenge was definitely new, and that was great. I loved that reward challenge. It looked so fun. It was so interesting. I mean, granted, it was a blowout, but maybe if they did it again, where it was like a more evenly matched group, I just thought it was like such a great challenge.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the ball through a table maze a million times before on Survivor, but good on them to get the people actually like moving the table maze in the water.
Make it a team of people. I loved it. Yeah. We just had a question that we just missed. I missed who it was by, but it said like the questioner said, "Is anyone else getting really annoyed with Sydney?" And I've actually been thinking like, could Sydney be the one who loses in the end?
It's hard to imagine that. I mean, you do have that Jason and Scott do have the axe to grind with her as well. She was the person who initially flipped on them way back at the Nick vote. But who you feel like that could potentially lose to Michelle?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I'm saying Ty now. I've been saying Jason for a while, but I think it could be.
You certainly could. You could come up with that scenario. I think it's certainly. I feel like that Michelle, you really are convincing me that she is a person who is very dangerous on the jury, especially if that with Julia that she's at least adjacent to Jason and Scott, no pun intended, where she was sort of like on the periphery of voting with them, and then that's like a 3-person block for her. Potentially in the end, so I think that
they might feel more betrayed by her. I think they really could feel betrayed by that.
But no, I'm talking about for Michelle. Those people, those three could vote together for Michelle in almost any scenario, and I think that Michelle's actually somebody that might have a lot of appeal to that specific jury.
Yeah, no, I mean, I obviously agree.
Yeah.
Tim Westine wants to know, after Joe getting more screen time tonight than he's gotten all season, are we starting Joe's winner edit? What do you think?
Winner edit. Come on. What? Like the winner edit, Steven, just to, it's not just like, oh, that person's been on camera a lot, so they're probably going to win.
No. It's a lot. There's a lot that goes into it. It's certainly their camera time. It's also the way that their story works out. Is it like, are they, shown to be contradicted a lot? Are they typically proven to be right? Do people typically say nice things about them in context? Are they shown to, to have a lot of interior life? So there's a lot more than just Joe got one confessional tonight. Is he winning?
Yeah, Joe's made a lot of mistakes in terms of he's spelling words wrong, he's yelling at people, he's the winner of the season.
Yeah.
A lot of people were going nuts on Twitter about the firewood stuff, about comparing it back to a callback to Butch from Survivor the Amazon.
Yeah.
And maybe there's going to be some new inductees to the Junior Deputy Firewood Bitch Academy, which I was the first member of.
Yeah.
So,
it could be. It was like Aubrey. That was a funny moment, and it's like you are so sour after you lose a reward. Like coming back after a reward it's like the most frustrating feeling, because like not just are you miserable, but other people are happy. Like you're not just like suffering, but half the tribe is out there having so much fun and bonding and scheming and making alliances, and like you're sitting there as miserable as ever. Like coming back from immunity challenge and having lost, it's like that's 9 other people have lost, and we get to like scheme and strategize and pull together a plan. Coming back from award it's just the pits.
Well, you were very upset about it during Cambodia.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah,
it sucks.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing. Matthew Rogers, how much of a factor will Chaos Sydney be towards Ty's situation?
Chaos Sydney, I don't know.
I think that's a stretch, Chaos Sydney.
Yeah.
Okay. What about Michael? What does he have to say?
Michael Fragiscatos wants to know the first 6 immunity challenges, each won by a different person. This is a really interesting statistic. Is this a Survivor first? So refreshing. If this trend continues, Joe could win next, LOL. Michael, I agree that Joe will not be winning next, LOL. But, yeah, it's really great. I love that.
Yeah, it's been very interesting. I do feel like that the trend could change, barring the final appearance of the Name That Perry Como song challenge. If they ever did pull that out, and this was the week.
This is Joe, yeah. Wow, what a great thing of Amazon callbacks.
What a night. What a night.
Yeah.
Let's do 2 more questions. Emily Phillips says, Ty wasted his advantage but wasn't eliminated from the game. Is this the end of the curse, or does it not count since Steven's elimination technically came after Kaoh Rong? Is the advantage cursed, Steven?
I mean, I think the advantage, like I said, is very hard to play correctly. It's very, very, very hard to play in a way that it actually has an impact on them.
Impossible?
Not impossible. I mean, I hope it happens. I think the way to leverage it, in some ways, Ty is being smart, like hinting that maybe it is an idol, maybe it's not.
He did actually a very good job. I mean, we've knocked Ty a lot in terms of strategy in this podcast, but I feel like that he did do a great job where he was able to defend against people blindsiding him tonight.
Yeah, I don't think I've knocked Ty. I mean, yeah, he's all over. I mean, I think I've said like his, people's perception of him is bad, but I think he's kind of used leverage pretty well, and like it didn't work this way, but like Ty was right about Michelle. I thought he played his advantage really well. Throwing votes at Michelle and maybe hoping someone like Jason went along with him. It's not like nothing he did was that bad.
Well, he's bad at tribal council. He's bad anytime he gets put on the spot, and I also think that it makes him a bad candidate for a final tribal council. Like, you sort of could imagine him up there in the final tribal council, and, say like a Jason or a Scott gets up there, and it's like, Ty, my man, you screwed us over. What do you have to say about that, Ty? You told us you had our back to the end. How do you defend? And like, yeah, he's gonna be bad in that spot.
Yeah, no, I agree. He gets flustered, and he's not good at conflict. But I think he's got I don't think like he's gotten a lot of crap about for strategy. I don't know. Like, I haven't really thought holistically about not holistically, but I haven't really thought about his whole game as an arc yet.
Okay. Well, we'll think about it. We'll think about it. All right, let's do one more question.
Alvaro Dongo wants to know: is there a way somehow Michelle takes Joe to final 3 and to final 2 and beats him? There's a way.
I mean, it would seem unlikely. It would feel like that you would have some sort of a scenario where it's the Aubrey gets voted out this week at the final 5, where 1 week from tonight we're talking about Aubrey has gone home, and then we get to the final 4, and okay, we can't let Ty get to the end. We've heard people say that this season. Now he doesn't have an idol, and now you get to the final 3. Michelle wins the final immunity and says, boy, Sydney would be tough to beat in the end. Let me take Joe. It could happen, but I think it's probably a stretch.
I mean, in terms of game logic, it's not that crazy. I don't know. Does he get to the end with Aubrey and Joe, and then he wins and takes Joe? I don't know. That to me doesn't seem that crazy. I guess it's possible. It's possible.
It's possible. I mean, I think that one of the fun things about this season, and it's really, I mean, we're now 12 episodes into this season, and all season long we keep saying, I guess when is it going to start to suck? When is it going to start to suck? Because it was so underhyped in the preseason. This has been a really great season.
I thought this episode and the last episode, I've enjoyed them. I thought they were a little bit slower, and the Julia boot, the Jason boot, given what they were, which was one alliance mopping up another alliance, I thought they were really strong episodes, but they weren't really total shifts in the game maybe last season gave you, where every boot was a total blindside. Right. Maybe be grateful for what you've had.
Yeah, you're right. Probably not spectacular episodes, but really, really strong episodes that have kept the season very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. What's his last question? Tim says, can Ty beat anybody but Joe right now, Steven?
I mean, I don't know. Sure. Yeah, maybe. No, probably not.
It's going to be tough. It's going you'd have to see what people are doing on the way out in terms of let's say hypothetically Aubrey really screws over Michelle and Sydney to get to the final 2 with Ty and really leaves them with a bad taste in their mouth on the way out the door. Is that possible?
So much happens. I mean, and that's just it, right? It's it's not how you start, it's how you finish. I think that, we've seen in one episode everyone saying Ty's unbeatable to Ty's the worst. Last week everyone was saying, certainly 2 weeks ago, people were like, oh my gosh, Ty is the hero for all ages, and now it's oh, Ty, he sucks. So it really does change quickly, and certainly those last few tribal councils are, really crucial.
Would it help Ty's case in a final tribal council if he brought Mark the Chicken and had him do tricks at the final tribal council?
Oh wow, that would be something.
That would be something where it's Ty, how do you explain yourself? Hold on, look, watch this, look what he can do now. Yeah. Roll over. I've never seen a chicken do tricks before.
Yeah, it would be great. I mean, the chicken was hanging out in the hammock tonight.
It was amazing. This chicken is, forget the $1 million. Ty needs to go on tour with the chicken.
Do you think they should do Amazing Race together?
Yes. Forget Beast Mode Cowboy. Yeah. Ty and the chicken was the ultimate bromance of the season. All right. Hashtag for tonight. Can we go with Steven's Haunted TV?
Sure.
That's not going to scare you? Is that going to creep you out?
No.
Okay. All right. Steven, I am very interested to know who got the fishy tonight.
Well, I look forward. You can click on my blog. It should be up imminently.
Okay. Steven is going to have his blog.
Well, should we talk about it? Let's talk about it. I gave it to Sydney.
Sydney? Okay. Yeah. Why Sydney? Because she won immunity?
I thought she had the decision to make tonight, right? She was the one who could have gone either way. No, I'm sorry. She muscled Aubrey into voting her way, right? Her ally, Michelle, was threatened, and Sydney was the one who made sure that Michelle was safe and that Jason went home.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right call because I feel like that we didn't love the move that Aubrey made, and so I say good, give it to Sydney. Fair enough.
Yeah,
All right.
I think. Yeah.
And find out more about the logic behind that when you read Stephen's People blog. Follow Stephen on Fishbach. Follow Stephen Fishbach on Twitter at Stephen Fishbach to get the link.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So here's where we go from here. Jason exit interview coming up in the morning. Looking forward to that. Then we're going to have the recap show with Parvati and then the voicemail podcast with Mike Bloom. That's very, very exciting stuff.
Yeah.
And then Steven and I are going to be back 1 week from tonight to talk about who is headed to the final four of Survivor Kaoh Rong. 2 weeks from tonight is the finale, Steven. Can you believe it?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, we've had the appropriate number of weeks, so it seems like it's about time.
Here we're rounding out your first season back on the Know-It-Alls after playing on the show. Has the season flown by?
It has. It's been fun to watch the show and not be on the show. It's fun.
Always.
Criticize other people's mistakes, and I came back thinking like I'm gonna be so much nicer, and I'm not gonna like take people to task. That really faded very quickly.
Very quickly it wears off.
Yeah.
What fun would that be?
It's true, but you can't give people the benefit of the doubt all the time. You gotta criticize based on the show that we're seeing.
Well,
Unless it's me.
Look, and I do try to do that. It's just hard to do that in this spot where it's sort of like the instant reaction to what you just saw. So it's sort of like we're sort of after this podcast, when we get into the recap and the podcast that we do later on in the week, we can sort of like reflect back and say, I wonder maybe if if maybe we're being too harsh on this. But in this seat right here, when we're talking about the instant reaction, you just watched the episode.
The hot takes.
Tough to do that. Hot takes coming out. All right. So Stephen Fishbach, the second most knowingest know-it-all.
Oh my God. The ill-gotten gains, Cesternino. Ill-gotten gains.
All right. Well, pitch me on some more ideas.
No. Believe me, you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose it.
Surely I'll lose it. Yeah.
Coming back home.
Yeah. All right. Well, a very fun show tonight. I certainly am looking forward to reading your comments, and Stephen is too, all on the website, robisawebsite.com. And we do appreciate when you subscribe to the podcast because we got a lot more coming up this week. robisawebsite.com/iTunes or search for Rob as a Podcast, RHAP, in your favorite podcatcher. Have a great night. Talk to you on Thursday. Take care, everybody.
Bye.